Welcome to the Franchise Founders Podcast. We are on a mission to help aspiring entrepreneurs just like you take action through franchise ownership,
allowing you to obtain more financial freedom, time with family, and ultimately a business that can run on its own without you. Welcome to another episode of the Franchise Founders Podcast. Your co-host, Dan Claps here. Right now, our other host, Christian Dadulak, is not joining due to some travel from the IFA, but I'm here with a new friend of mine, Matthew McReynolds. Really excited about this episode. Before I introduce Matt, give you a little bit of context. So, Matt had been interacting with my content over the past few months, and we started to chat and just had one or two conversations. And I said, hey, appreciate knowing you, and we built that type of relationship, and I've been watching his content as well, and I see that he's building a really nice business and life, and I've been enjoying seeing what he's been doing. And the topic of this conversation that we're going to be getting into is really around building a franchise business. Matt's a multi-unit franchisee, in a Mosquito concept, and has a demonstrated history of working in the consumer services industry and building teams. And he's building a company. Over the past 7 years, he's built the business, and he's going to continue to do so. And so we're going to get into topics around building a business that runs itself, building team, building culture, and just overall how to become a better business leader. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here with you, Dan. Thanks for having me.
I guess to start, let's get into the story. I mean, you're a pretty young guy. Like you got into franchising 7 years ago. You started as a franchise owner. Like, what's the story?
Yeah, man. So that's right. We're entering into season 8 with Mosquito Joe right now. I got into franchising. It's funny listening to podcasts like this and other franchise podcasts that are out there. Everybody's got a story of, I just fell into franchising, and it's empowering in a way, but it also feels like it takes away my uniqueness because I also fell into franchising kind of obscurely. Before operating this business, I was working in the inner city for a high school in South Dallas. Prior to that, I did pretty much the same thing at a school in Chicago. My whole background is gang intervention, working with inner city kids, specifically in academics and athletics, and being the mentor that a lot of those demographics are missing. So went straight into that after school. It was around 2015 that I'd been working in South Dallas at a school, Cornerstone Crossroads Academy, for about 1.5 years. Meantime, my dad, he's been working at Apple Computer for about 22 years. So really, my whole life, I've known him as working his way up, working the corporate ladder at Apple Computer. Well, I like to describe it like this. If you or your audience has read the E-Myth, there's the character, the avatar that the author talks about as the person who has the entrepreneurial seizure and has to go out and do the thing on his own and be his own boss. Well, that was my dad, working at Apple for 22 years, loved the first 19, and then the last 3 was really a struggle. Started looking at different franchise opportunities and came across Mosquito Joe. Mosquito control, a very niche service in the DFW, Dallas, Texas area. He figured there's going to be a market for it. It's hot. I hate mosquitoes. Sure. Let's knock this thing out of the park. At the time, he still lived in Austin, Texas, a town called Pflugerville, where I was born and raised. My wife and I had just moved to the Dallas area. We had been up here for a few years. Mosquito Joe only had territory available sporadically through Dallas. And so we were able to work together and piece together a nice pocket of territory. I think we started with 4 back in 2016. So I left my job at the school, came on full time. My dad essentially retired from Apple Computer, but didn't really get involved in the day-to-day of our business until 2018 when we acquired 2 additional Mosquito Joe territories that were exponentially bigger than the 4 that we had. We went from servicing about 200 customers on a recurring basis to about 650, 700 overnight. And so when that happened in 2018, called Pops up, had him start helping out in the day-to-day. And we've been rocking it ever since. That's kind of the story of how we got in. Our business has adjusted and shifted quite a bit since then. But it's been a journey. So I'm excited to go dive into it.
That's an awesome story, and I appreciate you sharing. So you started out the business, and then you grew through buying revenue. So that's saying don't build, buy revenue. And so you were able to start off by building and then acquire these other entities to add to your overall. How does that work? Like, is each location? Do you have a management company that oversees each location, or are you running separate P&Ls on each, or is it all one QuickBooks Online subcategory? I've actually never asked a franchisee that question with multiple units, and it's kind of crazy that I don't know the answer to that, but today I'm going to learn.
That is a phenomenal question that I wouldn't have even cared to try to answer until very recently when we sold two of our territories. So we have our full business under one QuickBooks account. Ideally, you would have every territory broken up, because with each territory, especially in Mosquito Joe, it's a very different demographic, psychographic, geographic, the way that the expenses are broken up. When I send a truck out to Rockwall territory or Garland, it is the setup of my route is extremely different. So it's much more expensive from just an economic standpoint of think about the windshield time for the technician to get from one house to the other, where when I send a technician to Plano, each house is about 2 minutes apart. I could send a technician, a full route for me is about 15 houses a day. That's 75 houses a week for a technician. That technician can do those houses much quicker when the lot size is a standard quarter to a third of an acre, and each house is 2 minutes apart, versus I might have a couple houses that are it might be an acre, 2 acres, which is going to get more per treatment. But if I've got to drive 15 minutes to the next house, that really jacks up my margins when I'm looking at the bottom line. So as we added territories and sold off territories, we had to actually work backwards to, okay, and we had to do a lot of guesstimation when we were putting the books together. And the individual who purchased our Garland and Rockwall territories just this last October in 2022, we had to do a lot of guesstimating and really working together. I know of franchisees who have those systems in place, but they've had to really do the grunt work in creating those spreadsheets separately. I know people who have bigger territories sometimes split it up between a north and a south, or an east and a west. But going back, I think it would have been a better play to break everything up individually. Mosquito Joe of Plano, Mosquito Joe of Frisco. We just didn't have we didn't understand back then, because we weren't thinking about the acquisition process and we might be purchasing or selling down the line. That wasn't even on our radar back then.
It's a good topic. I really like when I think about it, mostly because you had the acquisitions. That's where I was curious of, how you would do the books and records of that. I mean, this is something that I currently am going through, which is, we've launched a platform or holdco with an entity under it and multiple entities in the future. And there's a lot of finance that I had to learn to do that properly. For example, switching from QuickBooks Online, which had always been my preference, to QuickBooks Desktop, because QuickBooks Desktop, for whatever reason, is much more robust and allows you to do better. It's funny, every accountant loves QuickBooks Desktop more than online, believe it or not. And the reason why is that on the desktop, again, it's more robust. All it means is you have to have a license for every computer that utilizes it, and you can't do it as mobilely. But we made QuickBooks Desktop gives you a little bit more ability to do what's called classes within a P&L. And so you can break out revenue and profitability. And
more extensively. I honestly, like, I still can't believe that that's so hard to do. I never understood that, why it's so challenging with QuickBooks. Well, let me ask you another question. And by the way, Matthew, what we like to do on these is I like to get super granular. So people that listen get something like, wow, I could take that. I just did an IFA roundtable, and I was like, make sure you guys all have a pen, because I'm actually going to give you things to actually do, not like some broad, thing. And so my first question or second question back to what you're saying is, now that you're doing that, who's doing that? Is that you? Is it your dad? Is it someone on your team? Do you have an outsourced controller? Like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, having the outsourced controller is a goal of mine that hopefully we will have by the end of this year. Currently, my dad is doing he's got the accounting background. That's what he did for Apple. So for him, it's one of those things that he's able to fill that seat
That's
very
great.
easily. And so he's able to go back and really crunch those numbers and break it up. It's definitely not me.
That's fantastic. So your partnership. So let's touch on this for a moment. It sounds like it works really well. You have your roles and responsibilities drawn out and a line in the sand. So you're handling the operations of the business, the sales, the team building, and your dad is doing the back end, or just the accounting, or what else falls into his bucket of roles and responsibilities?
No, that's great. That's something that we've really had to work on in these last few months, and we're still working to perfect it. You're absolutely right. I definitely am more of the visionary of the organization, and I do handle a lot of the operations from a day-to-day perspective, the hiring, the exiting, the culture building, the development of the people. But when it comes to my dad, for the Mosquito Joe side, he is definitely the finance admin seat, working over our office managers and our CSRs, kind of making sure they have the right tools that they need to do their day. He'll also do a lot of we just started with, how should I put this? Something that we should have done much longer ago, but tracking the productivity of our technicians in not just revenue, but understanding, okay, how many treatments are they getting an hour? What is the specific net promoter score for their route? What are they doing? What is their respray rate? Those are types of things that he does and is able to bring back to us, because we've been doing a lot of EOS self-implementing lately. And so our level 10 meetings that we have every week, he'll bring those documents to the table, and we'll be able to discuss and really assess each technician and how well they're doing. And if I need to come in and provide additional, training tools, or we need to talk about, okay, you guys, you're doing great in this area, but you need to work on this. That is a way that we're able to play off of each of our strengths, because I'm much more of a interpersonal individual, and he is definitely a spreadsheet. He can look at that chart and put things together and create the graphs, and then I can just talk about it.
That's great that you have that, because it's not an easy role to fill if you don't have someone in like the trust circle, right? Like, like us, we're currently evaluating what we call a finance director, who would grow into a controller. But like, the complexity of our business and really understanding the numbers is something that, we could do, but it's not the right use of time. And so delegating that, which has a cost because it's a pretty intelligent person. So having that in your team is in your partnership is great. I guess my next question, and I'm getting right into the granular, what do you guys use for some of that reporting? Is your dad doing, is it all Excel? Do you have some type of tool? Is it provided through the CRM? Is it through Mosquito Joe? Like, how do you guys do that?
So the data itself comes from multiple sources. It's really him looking into our CRM, tracking the individual route, but then we have a separate platform that tracks the net promoter score for each route. And then we're able to look at our paychecks and, okay, when did they clock in? Did they clock in late? Did they clock in 5 miles down the road? Were there any disciplinary stuff? So he's really pulling from different sources. That's actually a great, having that in one house. If there's not somebody out there doing it, that's a great model or a great business. But he's very savvy with the Excel. The trick with the partnership and how it's set up now is to really define those seats and allow him to excel in that space, because we do get, or in the past have gotten caught up with him also holding down, wanting to interact with customers too. He likes doing the sales and doing the quotes. And so making sure that we delegate the time, and okay, if you're going to rock this seat, then we need to make sure that you are 100% accountable and we have to get this done. Maybe we need to fill this sales role or this other, these other roles with somebody else. And we actually fell backwards into that, because last summer I tried to hire a bookkeeper, because I'm looking at the numbers and I don't know this stuff. And, he's out there doing quotes and doing installs, and it just wasn't happening. And which it made sense, because, he's doing it, but we got busy putting out fires. And so I'm going to bring in a bookkeeper. And it was him sitting down and deciding, well, no, I still want to do this. I'm not willing to let this seat go yet. And so we had to have that discussion, and it was me being willing and able to confront my business partner, but also my dad, and say, well, okay, if you're going to do it, then you got to do it, because this is super important for how we track everything moving forward.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's either we're going to do it or we're not going to do it. Someone's got to do it in the organization. I remember, I learned that lesson where we were running a pretty decent sized business without, in my previous business, without that, because I was super on top of the numbers, or our accountant was, but never to the level that it could have been. And I remember, for me as a manager or leader, it got harder and harder, and it's like you would cling on to it, and then one day it's like, I know for me, bringing in an outsourced controller, which, by the way, does not have to be super expensive. I mean, you're talking about, you can have a bookkeeper for a few $100s. You can have, I had a controller type. In my experience in business, I've had a controller type person for $1,500. Not controller, but just helping with
a fractional CFO type of thing. I'm still learning the different ranges.
Oh man, this is a conversation, because I haven't figured this out yet either.
All right.
But we had a fractional CFO when I started the business franchise playbook. I'm moving at a pretty expedited time frame. We've done a lot in the time frame, and not really for any other reason than there's a team of people behind it, and I'm just overseeing that. But I made a decision. I remember people saying, I don't understand. You don't need this, and you don't need that, and you don't need that, and you don't need this. And my decision was, no. I've seen how it gets when things are busy. I know what it's like. And so before launching the business, while it's not busy, I want to do everything I possibly can, because I have the time to do it. And yes, we're going to make an investment up front, and it's going to be substantial, but these investments will be made either way. It'll just be done later or now, and I'm going to do it now, and it's actually going to build the business faster. And every time I've ever done that, it's worked out that way. You lay the foundation a little bit early, and I candidly, I think I have a good ability to kind of see right before we need something, putting it in place. Just because in my past, I've been buried before. I hate being in that position of, shoot, we got to fix this. And now I got to do it while I'm juggling all these balls.
Yeah.
Just now I was on the phone with the bank, setting up a bank account. And there was something that alarmed me, because I'm like, wait, when we get to this revenue, is this going to become some issue where I have to sign off on, and all of a sudden it's a week of banking nonsense. I don't let's fix that now then. And I tell the bank that with a business that hasn't even really started, and they're they can't grasp. And in my mind, it's funny. I just said this to someone. Right now, at the time of this recording, we have one unit in our first franchise, system that we're building, that we're going to launch in April. And I joke, I say I have zero franchisees, but I identify as 200. So when you go to the IFA, when you're a franchisor, the number one question people ask is what kind of franchise, and then how many units. It's always how many units. So I joke around. I was like, well, we have no units, but I identify as 200.
That's awesome.
But what I mean by that is, from day one, we built this business as if it had 200 units.
our reporting software, our overall KPI tracking, all our CRM system, our health benefits for our own team, our LMS system is all built as if we have, or it's being built as if we have 200 franchisees. But I'm on this tangent. What I'm saying is like for, $1,500 a month, you can get like an outsourced controller. Here in New Jersey, New York, $5,000 a month was getting us like a really hands-on. It was actually too much. We didn't need that, right? So I'm looking for that sweet spot between like not a bookkeeper, I was looking for that sweet spot between not a bookkeeper to like an outsourced controller. For us at the business we're doing, we decided we're going to take that in-house and actually hire someone into the team because of just with what we're doing when we add franchisees. We had to make this decision. It was like, we can outsource this, but then all you're going to get is that. Or we could pay just a little bit more, bring it into the house, but build a teammate, which is another teammate, which is another culture fit, which is another driver of culture. And then later when we have franchisees, what we call this finance director, they could, if you were a franchisee, they could sit with you once a month, let's say, like a success coach, and their job is just drilling into your profitability. And we set up our structure, and this is what's different than outsourcing it. We set up our structure in that comp model for whoever ends up getting this job that we're currently looking for, that their bonus structure is tied to the profitability of the franchisees.
Got it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Because what happens is like, nothing wrong with being revenue focused as a franchisor. You want every one of your franchisees to have strong AUV. AUV is great. We want AUV as a franchisor. It leads up to the top of us as a business of supporting franchisees. But AUV doesn't really matter, right? Like what you bring home. Tommy Mello says it best. Top line. Hang on, let me remember it. I'm going to forget the quote. He has a great quote. It's like top line is vanity, profit is sanity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when we developed our compensation models on the franchise playbook level, the holdco level, it was important that we found ways that our team was not just motivated to award franchises and get them open and get the most AUV possible. We need to obsess over the profitability of our franchisees, obsess over it. Like that's more important than top line. And yes, as an organization on the franchisor side, of course we want more royalty revenue off top line, but for the way to do that is actually counterintuitive of what people think. And focus on the profitability. And when they're more profitable, they'll grow in revenue. And so this whole tangent, I think, is just around a lesson of if you can get someone on your team obsessed with your unit's profitability, for example, like you're probably like a growth oriented guy. I just getting to know you. You're bringing in sales, you're bringing in revenue, you're growing your team. You want to grow. It also comes with our age too. It's like typically we're going to be growth oriented. So then if you could find someone on your team, and maybe it's your dad, maybe it's someone else that's obsessed over the profitability, it always leads to a good counter. And of course there's arguments, right? There's debate. Your profit guy is always going to be kind of and that's what you want. You want to check and balance between profit and revenue growth.
No, it's good, man. I see so many, entry points to where I can come back. I mean, just from the franchisor perspective, I think that's great that you're starting with that in mind because yes, you're going to get paid off the revenue of your franchisees, but at the end of the day, more franchisees and your unit count is going to go up when prospective clients or candidates do the validation process and they're actually talking to the franchisees that are currently with you and you actually have happy people because they're profitable. That's just going to help you in the long run. I mean, I can only imagine being a part of a system that the franchisees are not happy. You can create a brand that has 1,000 Z's, but there's going to come a point when the system is going to break because you either have a mass exodus or you have a lot of people shutting down and going out of business. And what comes up will come down very quickly and aggressively. So I can totally see that. back to us on a personal level, I think that's exactly right. I think for me as an owner, I need to be able to put myself in a situation where the roles in my team are delegated out and handled by people who can do them super successfully and way better than I could. And it's not that I have to it's great if you can find people that are smarter than you in the task that you're hiring them for or that role. But even if you feel like you're an A+ player in a bunch of different things individually, you as an owner trying to do everything, you're eventually going to find yourself as a C+ in all those different things. So even a B individual who can come in and do that one thing better than you can when you're trying to spread yourself out so thin is only going to help your business grow. In my team meeting yesterday morning with my technicians, there was a moment where my lead tech, and I was coming in and out because I was setting up a TV for these guys because we had some videos that I was facilitating. I had turned it over. And the lead tech, not seeing me come back in, says, and by all means, if you have an issue in the field, please do not call Matthew. Call me, call our office manager, he listed off 3 other ways that they can get their problem solved before they should even think about calling me. And it was one of those moments that I just stood there and I could have cried, because that has not been the case. There are so many times in my journey, and I network and I listen to other owners now in the franchise space, but also doing their own organic bootstrap business, and they're so afraid of delegating and elevating and getting themselves up out of their business. So for me to be able to hear one of my leaders, a young leader, might I add, this is his first year officially in a leadership role, training and learning, putting it out there from the beginning. That was a testament to him, and it's a testament to kind of what we've grown, that we do have the people and the systems in place, and I don't have to micromanage these guys. And if they have a blower that runs out of gas, or if a tube falls out of the back and they leak product everywhere, in the past, I could be having a meeting with, this could be a 10,000, 15,000, name the price tag of, some of these networking, better than I could even say, but any connection and person that you meet and put into your network can drastically increase or change the course of your entire life and the entire life of your business. I can't be out there doing making those connections if anytime someone has a flat tire, I've got to turn around and go save the day. And so I want to curate that in every aspect of my business. So there will come a day where, my dad will either have to, if he wants to continue to work in the business, he'll have that specialized role there. If I want to work and have a job in the business, I can have a specialized role, but all that other stuff will be worked out. And if we don't do that successfully, there's no way to possibly scale or to grow. And we've really had to learn that the hard way, but I'm excited that our team is catching that vision. And that's really the culture. And it feeds into the culture of developing our people, and they feel it and they like it. And they stick around longer than they have in the past, but B, where I see them in other, them being the demographic, the people that are coming in to do these labor jobs, they stick when they're part of a team that values their development and values their existence, really. And so I think that's super important on a lot of levels. So I match your tangent with another tangent, sir.
No, it's good. I think these tangents are good, but I would say, just hearing in your business, I think what you said is so spot on. And I think it comes down to if you really want to take that to the next level, maybe you've already done this, but what I found is, so usually the things that are literally the most boring, uneventful things are the things that really separate your business. So for example, going and writing on a Google Doc, your roles and responsibilities.
Wow. Yeah.
So you go and you write down literally Matthew McReynolds, roles and responsibilities. And it's like this, defined, clear, sign off. Here's their roles. Here's the other person's roles. And everyone signs off on that. You commit to it. Literally like sign something like these are the roles and responsibilities. Another thing I like to do is I give people, anyone we hire or potentially hire, I ask people for a list. I say, write down everything you're great at and that you love doing. And then write everything that you're not great at and that you hate doing. And by the way, they usually correlate. I don't want you doing anything that you hate doing, or maybe if it's for a little bit of time, that's fine if you're great at it. If you're great at it and you hate doing it, you got to do it for a bit, but we'll get you out of it as soon as we can. I don't want you doing anything that you're bad at. That's ridiculous. And I want you to really do what you love and what you're great at, like that sweet spot in the quadrant. And so we write those down and like you start to be able to figure out, and I'll give people like their roles and responsibilities and they'll write me back like in red the areas that they think they may not be great at. And then we make a decision, one, if they're the right fit, right, for that seat. And then if not, are they the right fit for our company, just not that seat, or just maybe not right now for that, all kinds of decisions. But anyway, you get people doing what they're great at and that they love doing. They sign off on it. And then the other thing I would suggest that I think is super helpful, and I learned this from a large franchisor, when there's like a crazy thing, like the truck runs out of gas, right? I don't know, something like happens. That's pretty out of the ordinary. It should be like, if this happens, you call this person. If it happens, that they don't answer, then you go here. Then you go, and like you're like way down the list. And they should see it as a sign of ultimate respect, is that following that process. And if you have it defined, like if I was in your business, and someone called me, I'm like, hey, I'm always happy to chat, especially if it's about like culture, vision, leadership. If you need to talk, like that's my role. But if it's related to the day-to-day, it's not that I don't know the answer, but for us to run the business the most effective and be able to help you the most, we have kind of this process. Did you look at the process before giving me a call? And if the answer is no, then it's like, all right, like, why don't you go back to the document, right? And like, look at that. And I'm granted, I'll probably give them the answer on the phone, but sometimes actually your ownership and willingness to jump to doing that is actually just creating a cancer in your culture.
It
right?
sets
So you
the
have
expectation of what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. Absolutely.
I know the boss. I know the owner. I'll just go around, which by the way, pisses off, excuse my language, but pisses off whoever's managing them. Like if I was working for a company and I was positioned to lead a team and that teammate was going up to my superior around me, unless I was doing like something egregious, it's like it's the ultimate disrespect to me from that teammate. But by the way, I'm annoyed at the leader who's managing me, because it's like my trust in you is going away because you're not empowering me to do my job, right?
100%.
And so you're actually answering them is potentially actually causing cancer on two different levels, even though you're trying to just do the right thing and help.
Yeah, no, I learned this. I learned that concept and try to implement it. We do implement it in our business because it's super important. But when I was at Wheaton College playing football, our head coach would talk about that exact thing. And if you got an issue with somebody, and it was more of an interpersonal, if you have a conflict, you need to talk to that individual person. If you do that and the issue is not solved, you need to go next step up. You need to talk to a team captain. If the team captain is not and then the team captain comes in and talks with both of you. If it's not resolved, then you need to go to the position coach. Next, your coordinator. By the time it gets to the head coach, this is going to be an extremely, extremely serious situation where somebody might not even be on the team anymore if it needs to get this far. So it gives you multiple opportunities to address it and follow that chain of command to create the respect and to create the accountability that we're talking about. So, man, I love that.
Yeah, it's that's awesome. So you played football in high school and college?
Yeah, so I in Chicago, Wheaton College, played football, ran track. That kind of led me into the whole coaching thing. As soon as I got out, coaching, personal training, that whole athletic. I still do races and competitions. Spartan races and high rocks, and I'll do a 5K,
Nice.
a half marathon here and there to stay competitive. But I love fitness. I love pushing myself physically just as much as I do, mentally, and just it's all about development. And it adds to the culture that we're building, because the team gets there's nothing that they are asked to do that I've not done and shown extreme competency in. So even if I'm not doing it now, I better not come out there and be better than you at the job that I'm hiring you to do. Because if I can go out there, or if I have to go out there and do it, that's going to be a bad look for you. So I like to incorporate that as well.
Man, it's interesting. I think the team sport background probably really does contribute to your ability to be coachable. And like, I was just having this conversation as we hire in our company around core values and like who's a fit. And for me, like I played team sports as a kid, but then my serious sport was wrestling. I wrestled in middle school and then in high school.
Yeah.
And I would probably contribute, I don't know, 80% of anything I have mentally is from wrestling. Like just mental toughness and resiliency and working in a team with a team. Even though it's an individual sport, you're wrestling as a team, and like that camaraderie that you have. And then that got even further. People don't actually know this, but I played in a rock band in high school.
Yeah.
Like pretty serious. Like we would pack out some pretty big shows, and like we were 4 guys, all friends.
Okay.
And so what I realized was I've been trying to recreate that team since I was 18 years old.
Wow.
Like I did that in high school, and these guys are still my best friends. Like the guitarist that was in that band, it's kind of funny because we played in a rock band. It's like a whole different version of him, like, rock guitar with, different look. He's like a big time private equity guy now. You know what I mean? Like I like to show him the photos. I'm like, this was you not even that long ago, man, 12 years ago. Like that's you.
Wow.
And then like, look how far you've come, and I'm excited to see where he's at in 10 years more. But what was interesting is like these guys like all really cared about each other, and that led us to being such like a uniform team. And so I realized that over the past 12 years, I'm 30, so the past 12 years, I've wanted to recreate that, which I finally have in Franchise Playbook, because our team there is so freaking solid. And it was interesting because at the IFA, the greatest quote, you'll probably see it all over LinkedIn, because when Drew Brees said this, Drew Brees was the keynote at IFA.
That. Yeah, awesome.
I'm not going to quote it perfectly, but basically the best teams he ever played for were the ones that loved each other the most, or that cared about each other the most.
Wow.
And I left with that. When I say care, I mean caring about you as a human being far beyond the functionality of the business. And if you leave the business, they still care about you. Like that kind of bond where if you can find people that you can work with that you care about like that, man, and you build a team like that, sky's the limit.
There's something about not just the struggling with another person or with another group of people, but the struggle and then coming out on the backside and appreciating. That's why I love doing a lot of the fitness stuff that I still do now as a 30 plus individual with a wife and kids and multiple businesses. There's something to putting yourself through pain and agony and hardship, surrounded by other people that are doing the exact same thing, and then coming out on the other side. I mean, there's people that you do one of these races, and there's somebody that you've never met before, but you started next to them, you finished right behind them or right in front of them because y'all are competing all day. You're giving each other hugs, you're patting, you got the person's contact information, and that's so applicable to business. I mean, I've had people on my team for as long as 5 years. Actually, my longest tenured employee and team member actually just left us. When he started, he was with us for 5 years. When he started, he was $10 an hour. Didn't have the full college degree, but he had a really good attitude. I've seen this guy grow up. I've been in his wedding. I have witnessed him have multiple kids, and now he's in another organization making a significant increase, 50, 60K plus benefits, plus, all these things that somebody wants to be able to have that starter pack when you're building out your family, and to see that growth and knowing that when, keyword when, an individual leaves my team, because it's going to happen one way or the other. It's a matter of when it happens. I want them to be in a better position than when they entered our organization.
Right.
And I also want to make sure that we have a continued relationship where they know that I'm a resource to help them be better. So and that's a challenge, because even if you have to exit somebody, you still have that same strategy of like, hey man, every relationship is about timing. The timing is not right. Here's why.
Right.
Here's these documented things. I want to be a resource for you. You need to work on this. Come back and talk to me later. Now, there's a lot of people that I wouldn't bring back on the team right now, but we would be able to have a conversation of, this is why we still need to have a proof of concept here. And, oh, it's huge, man. It's how you get the stick, because you have that culture of development and people that your people will see it. They can smell it, and they can smell when it's not there too.
You know, it's crazy, man. I don't normally like talk as much on, I usually it's more of an interview, but I'll tell you, like, we were recording this literally, like, I'm running off the adrenaline of IFA, which I actually just wrote myself a note that I'm going to have a podcast that just recaps IFA, because I some of the things, like, man, I'll tell you, like, one of the coolest things, and it relates to this about the team. Like, I was at the IFA, and one of the coolest things I've really, like, I'm going to do this from now on. We did an Airbnb instead of a hotel. Brought our whole team to IFA, nice. And, like, honestly, like, the price of those hotel rooms multiplied by 4 adds up pretty fast. And so the option to do an Airbnb not only saved money, but at first I was like, what am I doing? Like, it's going to be uncomfortable. I like to have my room, like, but let's do it. It saves money. What I didn't realize was it was the greatest team bonding. It was my team at the Airbnb. We had Wade from Rycor, who's a big time insurance company, and Aaron Harper, who's become a good friend of mine, who's launching a franchisor. And I mean, I was there and I was joking around with them that I felt like, because franchising as a franchisor is very similar to technology. Like, you're building a recurring revenue stream. It's super lucrative from a business. There's investors all over the place. PE, that's, you know, courting these types of businesses, lots of investment into it, and really great founders. And I feel like franchising is like Silicon Valley back in its heyday. Like, we're in this space where there's just so much.
100%.
Franchise
100%
is going to be bigger than ever. And it's like, I'm like, man, how the heck did I get lucky enough to be in this position? But I'm here, I'm going to run with it. So we're in this Airbnb, and I'm joking around, like, guys, like, what's the difference? Like, you know, that Aaron, you're Zuckerberg, and someone else is, you know, I'm obviously being, you know, facetious, but like, here in this Airbnb, I felt like I was in like Palo Alto, you know, as a startup. And I remind myself, there's this scene in Super Pumped, if you ever seen it. It's about Uber. Okay. The story of the founding of Uber. And, you know, it goes about, it's on Apple TV. It's about Uber's journey. And that founder did a lot of bad things, a lot of things about him that were not good, but his drive and his desire and the team that he built and the culture, it wasn't that great actually, but they were very, there was some negative, but their bond was strong, right? And so this guy in the movie or in the show, he's like the head of Benchmark Capital, which was a major investor in Uber, and he's like his guide, right? He's his guide throughout the story. And so there's this scene where they're all in like a log cabin, and it's where they have their leadership team meetings and they strategize. And he's like, hey, before you go there, take this in while you're here. You'll never have this again. Huh. You'll never be a startup like this. You're going to have a board. You're going to have people. It's not going to be the same. Drink this in. You'll never be 30 years old with not a lot of money. Like, all the things that like seem like a struggle. And so when I was at IFA, that's how it felt. Wow. And then we threw like an event. We threw like a house party. So it was like back being in college, like a pre-event. And we had like, man, some of the people there, like, I walk in my house and like, I've always looked up to Scott Abbott. I think he's an incredible leader. He's the founder of 5-Star, a bunch of businesses. And I'm like, holy shit, like Scott Abbott's in like the Airbnb. Like, this is amazing. You know, said hi to him. And then today he had a home services summit and I was listening and he said something like, your business is not a family. A better way to look at it is families. Well, for one, you can never leave your family, right? So family is really like, people do leave businesses and unfortunately sometimes have to be ejected from businesses when they're not a fit. Doesn't mean they're not a good person. They're just not a fit for the team, right? So he compared his team to a high-end sports team, because on a sports team, you're not a family. You're working together like a family in the sense that you're connected,
100%.
you care about each other. But sometimes, like when the guy's not the right quarterback, you got to pull him out. You got to put someone else in, right? So I really liked his analogy of your high-end sports team versus a family. Also, because he said, families have dysfunction.
Yeah.
Which everyone has a little bit. So,
no, that's 100%.
I think it's cool that you're building a sports
That's
team.
100% accurate. So back in 2019, I had the opportunity to actually try it out. Not very many people remember the AAF, the Alliance of American Football, but it was a spring football league. You have the XFL now, the USFL. In 2019, there was about 4 months of the AAF. And my father-in-law was a head coach for the Memphis team. So I initially tried out for the team thinking I would dust everything off and get out there again, and I didn't make it. Hamstrings didn't quite have the juice anymore. But I was able to come on as I wanted to be with the guys. I craved that environment, and at the time, the business, it was doing its thing. So I'm going to take my shot, and so I get on this team. I start out as unpaid equipment guy, and here I am thinking that I have a chance to be on the team. Now I'm washing the jocks, the practice jerseys, mudding the footballs at 11:30 at night. And I'm married with kid. What am I doing out here? I'm not getting paid. I'm out of state. And I grew in my role because I'm the type, man, I'll snipe your job if I'm on the team. Not because I am too hungry to bulldoze everybody, but I'm just a Swiss Army knife by nature. And because I didn't have any serious responsibility, I was able to navigate through the organization and eventually work under the GM for the team and assistant GM and assistant operations guy for the squad. The league shut down, and here I am, this great experience coming back to DFW to run my Mosquito Joe operation, tail between my legs. But coming back, I now had that experience of working under a general manager for a professional football team. The way that I managed my technicians and the squad in general, the way that I saw the business completely changed, because you do have to recruit good talent. You do have to find your A players. And if you have anybody that is not up to par, they can get cut. And you have to have the processes and procedures to do that, obviously, but 100% like a high-performance athletic team. That's a great analogy.
Yeah. Man, I could talk to you for a lot longer. This is a lot of fun, but I really enjoyed this conversation. And thank you for joining today on this episode. If someone really resonated with what you said and they want to get in touch with you, how could they do that?
I appreciate it, man. It's been a great opportunity to talk to you too. I am doing my best to be very active on LinkedIn and other social media platforms too. But here we have a multi-unit franchise business now, looking to expand. We have our in-house brand that is our thing that we're bootstrapping, and we're also looking into additional franchise brands in the home services space for now, but to stack together and really utilize having the management and holding companies and going that route. So anybody that's in the franchising space, the leadership and coaching, like I said earlier in the episode, I'm big in EOS. I just want to be a resource to folks, and that's how I plan on growing my personal brand. So LinkedIn, social media, Facebook, Instagram, would love to chat with anybody that is in that space or looking to get into that space. If I can provide any value, I would love to have a conversation.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Founders Podcast.
If you want our help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business to anything in between, shoot us an email at franchisefounders@gmail.com.